Hi and welcome to Simply Ballers 2024-2025 season previews. It's that time of the year where for the next 30 days I'll be releasing a season preview for each team. In each preview there will be a quick season and off-season recap. Then following that we'll be looking at what's in store for each team. We'll be looking at some of the key questions that they have, some of the positives, some of the negatives. It will be digging deeper in some of those areas. And at the end there are some final thoughts with prediction of the standings, their floor, their ceiling, some of the playoff chances, and some other fun predictions. Today we're going through the Portland Trailblazers, and there's not much to say about their season this year. They traded their franchise player in Damian Lillard last year. They hit the reset button. They embraced the rebuilding stage finally, and that's what they're going to get. They're going to have a bunch of new young players alongside some veterans, and that in the end resulted in winning 21 games and being the worst team in the West. A lot of it was also health issues. Scoot Henderson missed 20 games. DeAndre Ayton missed 27. Anthony Simons missed 36. Jeremy Grant missed 28. Robert Williams played only 6 games. All of this just makes the whole season frustrating to watch, even beyond it being a rebuilding team. It's hard to rebuild when the players you're rebuilding around are not playing. That's why they had 17 players playing at least 20 games. Their off-season was also just okay. They drafted Donovan Clingan with the 7th overall pick. They traded picks for Deni Avdija, and that was basically it. They're essentially in the same spot as they were last year, as they were just a few months ago as well. Their off-season changes getting Avdija and drafting Clingan. So outside of the complete overhaul of the veterans, there wasn't anything else that they could do. So it's still embracing that same old rebuild around Scoot, Ayton, Simons, and having a bunch of veterans that they could possibly remove. So what's in store for the Blazers this year? The first question is, what do they do with all the veterans? Will they find a team to get Grant? Should they move on from Ayton? Anyone else on the trade block that should be considered moving? How will Deni Avdija look on a new team, especially after his improvements last year with the Wizards? Will Williams be finally healthy and get back to what he was as a defensive player? Because that could help a lot. There's not many players that can change a team's defense the way Williams did for the Celtics. So even if your rebuilding team is going to great to have that kind of player back, it's going to make life a lot easier for everyone else. How much better will Henderson look in the second year? What kind of leap can we expect from him? And finally, what will the other young players look like? What will Clingan's rookie season be? So what should they do with all the vets? Their vets are not only vets that are taking touches away from the young players that are old, but they are also over the cap, and a lot of it is because of the vets making a huge amount of money. Ayton's making 34 million, Grant is making 30, Matisse Thybulle was making 11, Williams is making 13, and both Ayton and Williams are extension eligible. I'm sure that a lot will change here. Some of those players will be moved. I don't expect all vets to stay on this team beyond the trade deadline. Not sure which one will be moved. Not sure what they will be looking to get. Obviously, some picks involved and young players to embrace the rebuilding even more. But there are a lot of options for what to do with their vets. Because right now, what use do they have for someone like Grant or Ayton, even at this point, after drafting Clingan? Because statistically, Ayton basically had the same season he's had in the last 4 seasons. He's a consistent, good big. He scores nearly 20 points per game, has an odd 20% odd usage, grabs a bunch of rebounds, and that's it. With the Phoenix Suns, he was great when it comes to his efficiency, scoring easy points. But this year, he kind of just dropped. With some of his changing his shot profile, he did dip way below average. From last year, he went from 65% to 57%. That's going to matter a lot. But then what do you do with that kind of player? That's one of the reasons why his impact metrics was one of the lowest in his career. And that has to do with his offense, where he's a negative. He had a minus 0.4 offensive EPM, and a lot of that is with the kind of usage he has with the kind of shots he takes. Over 40% of his shots come from the short mid-range, where he's shooting 48%, and nearly 25% of his shots are from the long mid-range, where he shoots 51%. It's great. It's a good shot to have. He clearly developed that shot, that touch, to make it efficient when it comes to just accuracy. But that's not a good shot for a big, especially at that volume. But they make up almost 60% of his shot. On the other hand, he's still a good finisher at the rim. That makes life easier for all your guards because you have a big that can finish. He shot 75% at the rim with a third of his shots there. And that's a legit weapon for him. That's why he been that efficient in his time in Phoenix. He's also a good role player with averaging 4.2 possessions as a role man where he's shooting 56%. Again, that's helpful for all your guards. They need solid big men to thrive. I wouldn't say they need to move on for him unless they get an offer that they just can't refuse, but I also don't see teams lining up to get Ayton, especially at that contract. But he's still only 26 years old with solid skills as a big that should help them one way or the other. He's neither a player that would be too good for them or one that would stunt the development of all of their players. But he's also not someone that you just build around for, nor is he someone that other teams are looking to trade for. So they're probably just stuck with him, and it could be good. There is still potential for him to just change his ways to develop into a different kind of player. There could be some possibility with him and Klingon for some reason just to try it out, especially on this team. So there are ways you can use Ayton, even beyond just building around him or just trade it for nothing. When it comes to Grant, this is the kind of player I think they should trade for 100%. He should not be on this team beyond the trade deadline. I don't see the need for him. He's the kind of player I would think that would stunt growth from your players. Not necessarily that's a bad thing about him, but with how he gets his touches, how he goes about his scoring, are you going to say he needs to be a decoy or go into a lesser role for Scoot Henderson? I don't think he would do that. He has skill set that works better on good teams with better players. If he's on a team like this, he will get those touches and will dominate the ball because there's no other alternative for him. And in the first 2 seasons with the Blazers, he did shoot 40% from 3 on over 7 attempts per 100 possessions. In his first season, he was also surprisingly very efficient with 60% true shooting. Got to the line a lot. He's not the guy that you typically want to lead the team in usage. That's what I mean when he's a player that could stunt the players, even though he was respectable average in that kind of role. But in the end, even if it means taking a lesser deal for him, they should consider moving him. Whatever the best offer you can get, they need to just get it. If you can move on from that contract as well, that's a big bonus, and they should pull the trigger immediately. I'm not entirely sure what happens with Williams or what should happen with him, because he's a big question mark. Because in theory, he has shown in the past that he's 100% worth it. If this is a healthy Williams, they will be stupid not to give him an extension, not keep him. Because if it was that Williams, he's a defensive player of the year caliber player, and one that is a very efficient big, good passer, does all the big skills well. So it would be stupid not to have him. But at the same time, he basically missed all of the last season. He played 35 games before. In his career, he had played 215 games. That's a lot of question marks with his health, whether he's going to be on the court. And even if he's going to be on the court, is he going to be the same Williams that we saw before? Because at this point, it's probably a good question to have. Can he even be that Williams? He was a consistent 75% shoot at the rim. He shot 87 in his last year with the Celtics. He was one of the elite players finishing off cuts, dump-offs, lobs, and defensively, he was one of the reasons why the 2022 Celtics were so dominant. But that's not a guarantee that you're going to get him. He might be a very lesser version of all of that, and at that point, I don't think that it is worth keeping him. So it's another tough decision for him, for the team to do with him. Because if he is that player, you should keep him. But if he's not that player, then you just end up being stuck with him on that contract, and he might just lose it for nothing. Then there's Denny Avdia, who they traded some picks for. He's still a good young player. That's on a bit of an older version of a young player, but I like that for them. He's not too old. He's not a player that will dominate the ball. He won't take away the touches from other players nor stunt the growth, and he's still also just getting better. Here are some of the stats from from the Wizards and from the previous year. He jumped from 12.6 points per 75 possession to 17.1. He jumped from 53% true shooting to almost 60. His free throw rate went up. His usage went up. His assist split percentage went up. His 2-point percentage went up. His 3-point percentage went up. Everything has gone up for him. He looked much better as a finisher. He was a better shooter as well. He's a good defensive player as well. That's a player that's worth keeping. Even if he's on the older age of the young players, he will still help everyone else. But outside of the vets and some of the decisions regarding them, this whole season and seasons going forward, it's all about the rookies. It's all about the young players' development. The first one is Scoot Henderson. He was the rookie last year who saw one of the worst rookie seasons in a while. He was rough in almost every area. He shot 38% from the floor. He was dead last in true shooting points added with minus 160.6. His finishing at the rim was 47%. There are so many players from mid-range that shoot better than him at the rim. Rookie or not, context with the Blaze and all of that considered, it's tough to shoot sub 50% at that, just consistently like that. Of 385 rookies since 2014, Henderson ranked 373rd in LeBron metric. Though at the same time, there are a handful of players that did similar or worse that turned out to be great players right now. Darius Garland was 384th. Zach LaVine was 383rd. Colin Sexton was 376th. Jalen Green 369th. Brandon Miller this year was 367th. Devin Booker 357th. So being ranked dead last almost in impact metrics as a rookie, having so many of those weaknesses as a rookie, as a young player as well, it's not a sign that that's going to continue. There are players that ranked in similar ways with him as a rookies, and they grew out of it. So there's nothing about this season that's meant to write Anderson out. But there are plenty of steps and plenty of areas that he needs to improve in. Because consider this as well. This was out of the rookies in the database. Plenty of blues, some A's, grades, some B's. So compared to other rookies, he has done a good job. Everything else, the only thing he can't do is just finish. He's not a shooter as well, but it's not all bad. It's not something that is alarms going off that he may have been a wrong pick. It just takes time, especially as a rookie guard. There's also Shaedon Sharpe, but he only managed to play 32 games. Again, that's the health issues that was apparent for this team. There was still significant drop off from what he was doing last year. He got more shots, but that's it. He got more shots that resulted in more points, but his efficiency died. It went from 56% to 46% from when it comes to his 2-point scoring. His 3-point shooting went down 36 to 33%, and his effective field goal went from 55 to 47. A lot of that will probably be about injuries, health, and just not being healthy to get in the rhythm. But again, what do you even have in Sharpe? That's another question that will have to be decided throughout the season. That's again part of the rebuilding stage, is learning about what kind of players you even have. I'm interested to see what happens with Simons. He's 25. He's going into his 7th season. He had his most impactful season on offense when it comes to EPM at plus 2.9, but he's also the worst impactful defender. I still wonder what the ceiling is for him, what the role for him going forward. He had 3 straight seasons with above average efficiency from both effective field goal and true shooting, but that has dropped off this year. He doesn't get to the rim, doesn't draw fouls. He struggles scoring at the rim too, with only 57% there. He's still one of the better shooters, But that's mostly as a catch and shoot. He's only shooting 35% on pull-ups compared to 43 on catch and shoot threes. So what happens with him? He's still locked up on a good deal, but do you consider moving him if enough comes up, or do you still believe he's one of the guys that you should be building around with? But then, is him and Scoot a good backcourt to build around with, especially when it comes to his defense? So again, that's a question that will have to be answered throughout the season. And finally, we have Clingan, who comes in as one of the better defenders for them. The Blazers allow the second highest percentage at the rim with 70%. And I'm sure having a massive guy in the paint alongside Deni Avdija, that would certainly help. You need to be a good defensive team, even if you're a young rebuilding team. You need to have good habits. You can't just be letting everything easy at the rim. You shouldn't be focused on winning, but you also want to have... You don't want to be losing by 20 every night. And per Sam Vecini, he mentioned he was one of the most impactful defensive bigs in college over the past 2 seasons. Opponents shot 41% at the rim with him on the court. So that will be a big help. That will make life a lot easier for everyone else, knowing they will have a big guy behind them. So a lot of it will be about him as well. It will be seeing how his defense from college will translate to the NBA, whether he will have a similar impact. So the whole season will be about his defense too. And offensively, this is another case of Ayton, where it's a solid big that will do solid stuff. Again, that it's needed for Simons, that's needed for Sharpe and Scoot, to have a good big that can set good screens, score well, and open up the floor for them with the whole screen. You need good guard play, good guard play and good big men need each other. So having a player like that with guard plays should certainly help everyone else. So some predictions. Think they're going to be a 20 to 25 win team. I don't expect any big changes. Don't expect any big jumps or leaps. Their floor, which is the worst case scenario for me, is bottom of the league. Their ceiling is bottom of the league, but Scoot looks good. It's good. Their best case scenario is just they will lose a bunch of games, but Clingan looks good. Scoot looks good. Maybe Simons makes a bigger jump than you'd expect. And they get more from their vets when it comes to trading them. But that's what this season will be all about. It's the same as last year. It will be all about the youth, increasing trade value for others, and eventually becoming sellers at the deadline. I will be very surprised if either Grant or Thybulle remains on this team. With Ayton, I don't see many teams lining up to get him, so because of that, he'll likely stay for another year at least. I don't know what to expect from him when it comes to growth. What can he improve on? He's at that stage where it's looking like that's what he is. I'm not sure what you do with him either when it comes to just a rotation playing time, if the goal is also to develop Clingan for the long term. Everything else, it just depends on the development. It's Henderson improving, showing improvement all around. His decision making, shooting, turnovers, all of that needs to improve. It's Simons getting better as a finisher, improving as a defender, because that's needed. You can't be the worst impactful defender in basketball, even on a bad team. And it's everyone else showing what they are. It's looking at what Sharpe is. It's looking at what Deni Avdija is. It's seeing what young core do you even have. With all that said, I still expecting them to be at the bottom of the conference, and unless you're a diehard Blazers fan, this is not going to be a much most watch team. But that's what this season will be all about. It's the same as last year. It will be all about the youth, increasing trade value for others, and eventually becoming sellers at the deadline. I will be very surprised if either Grant or Thybulle remains on this team. With Ayton, I don't see many teams lining up to get him, so because of that, he'll likely stay for another year at least. I don't know what to expect from him when it comes to growth. What can he improve on? He's at that stage where it's looking like that's what he is. I'm not sure what you do with him either when it comes to just a rotation playing time, if the goal is also to develop Clingan for the long term. Everything else, it just depends on the development. It's Henderson improving, showing improvement all around. His decision making, shooting, turnovers, all of that needs to improve. It's Simons getting better as a finisher, improving as a defender, because that's needed. You can't be the worst impactful defender in basketball, even on a bad team. And it's everyone else showing what they are. It's looking at what Sharp is. It's looking at what Denny Avdia is. It's seeing what young core do you even have. With all that said, I still expecting them to be at the bottom of the conference. And unless you're a diehard Blazers fan, this is not going to be a much most watch team.